Awesome. Well, thank you for all the faculty and professors for sharing their great advice. So now we'll go ahead and start with panel number three, where we'll hear from students who are in their health professions. So these are going to be students who have been accepted into med school or pharm school or whatever profession they are in. So feel free to type in the chat any questions that you may have for our panelists, and then we'll get to them as soon as our introductions are done. So I'll go ahead and pass it off to Lady, and we'll start our introductions.
Thank you so much, Angelina. Again, good morning to everyone. We actually have a wonderful health profession student panel with us today, and I will be introducing all of them. So I would just like to ask all of our panelists that, as I'm introducing all of you, please also state your health profession and your school. So we will start with our first panelist. Sarah, are you in the call with us? Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Lady. Okay, my name is Sarah, and I'm a medical student, and I currently am a first year at the University of Arizona College of Medicine, Tucson.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sarah. Next, we have Jackie. Jackie, are you in the call with us?
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Jackie. I'm a first year pharmacy student at the University of Arizona College of Pharmacy.
Thank you so much, Jackie. Next up, we have Javier.
Hello, everybody. I'm a second year student now. I'm at NAU Occupational School up in Phoenix, Arizona.
Thank you so much. Next, I do apologize if I mispronounce your name, but we have Karvani.
Hi guys, it's Kairavi, sorry.
Kairavi, I do apologize. Hi, Kairavi.
Hi guys, I am a third year at Midwestern University. I'm a podiatric medical student up in Glendale, Arizona.
Thank you so much, Kairavi. Next, after Kairavi, we have Christina.
Hi everyone, my name is Christina Galbreath. I'm a second year PA student at NAU in the Valley.
Perfect, thank you so much, Christina. After Christina, we have Nikki. Hi, Nikki.
Hi, everyone. I am also a second year at NAU's occupational therapy program, and it's in Phoenix.
Wonderful. Thank you, Nikki. And finally, we have Valerie. Hi, Valerie. Are you in the call with us? If not, we will proceed on to the questions, Q&A portion. Okay, so the first question for all of our panelists for the health profession student panel is, what was your biggest challenge transitioning from being an undergraduate student to your health professions program? And anyone can answer this.
Okay.
I also put the question in the chat.
I can go ahead. So I think, are you talking in terms of like studying or just in general?
It could be in general.
Okay, yeah. So in general, well, the first thing that just comes to me is the studying part is that the thing with med school isn't that it's particularly difficult. I'm not trying to downplay it. It is difficult, but the speed at which the material is thrown at you is way quicker and way faster than any class in undergrad. So getting used to that is, people used to tell me before I started school that it's like drinking from a fire hose. And that metaphor could not be more true. Like, you just feel like things are just getting thrown at you and you just somehow have to grasp all of it very quickly. So getting used to that was the biggest challenge between how I did things in undergrad versus how I did it now. So as far as studying and like academics goes, it's that. And then with other things, I feel like you have to just get better at managing your time because lectures are recorded. I know recorded lectures are the new norm now, but even before, lectures were always recorded. People always watched them online, most people. So like getting used to that, when everyone around you is doing it, you're gonna start doing it too sometimes. And so getting used to doing that and not necessarily having to sit in class physically for every lecture, that's also something that takes a little bit getting used to. And you don't have to do this. I mean, you do now with Corona, but like you didn't before. So that was something that it took me a minute to get used to, that I'm technically attending so many lectures, but I'm somehow never really leaving my apartment. So it's a little strange to getting used to that. So, and other people can add.
I definitely want to echo that. Something that I would have spent maybe like a couple weeks learning in my undergrad physio courses, you know, we learn in like a day or two here, and it's, you know, you're just expected to know it or else you'll fall behind. So that's definitely something you got to prepare yourself for. I will say, there's kind of like a silver lining to this pandemic. A lot of people I know who aren't in my program, you know, they find themselves bored or having like too much free time on their hands. And it sounds kind of cynical, but I'm like, I don't have too much free time or boredom time, you know. I always have like lectures to watch and stuff to do. So it's not like I feel super stressed out because I mean, there's not really much to do nowadays anyways. So I don't know, it keeps me busy, and I mean, it's all interesting. So kind of something unique to this situation. But yeah.
Just to add to that too, I think that in undergrad, I studied completely differently than I do now for a PA school. And that was a huge adjustment for me personally, was like, okay, my study habits I had in my undergrad were nothing, like were not helpful for me in grad school. So just allowing yourself to have that time to like kind of give yourself that grace period until you figure out what works for you in whatever program you're in. I think that's very important to just remember it's not the same as undergrad, and you just need some time to adjust.
Sort of jumping off of that, I think a difference I found from undergraduate to going to pharmacy school was my mindset about classes. Like I was a physio major at U of A when in my undergrad, and I was studying for classes, but not really trying to apply what I'm learning to how I will use it in the future as a pharmacist. And so I think it's really cool now that I am taking these classes that um, I I learned this information in undergrad, but now it's a different mindset where I'm really trying to see like how am I going to apply this to patient consultations? How am I going to apply this to how I know how medications interact? So I think that's I don't know if that's a challenge. It's just something that I noticed transitioning from undergrad to pharmacy school is like how I'm actually going to be utilizing this knowledge in the future. And I think it would be important for undergrads right now to start looking at your classes like that instead of, oh, I just need to like memorize this information for this exam. Try to consider how you're actually going to apply that in the future.
I completely agree with what everybody else said as to studying in undergrad and prepping for the content. Another thing that I had difficulty with was I'm extremely close to my family, and I was for the program I started off living in Phoenix, but then the pandemic happened and I was able to move back home in Tucson. But I had to like kind of test the waters and see how often can I really go visit my family in Tucson without like falling behind in my studies. So that was something that, you know, I had to work with. How much can I actually handle before falling behind? So that's just something I wanted to add.
Alrighty, thank you everyone. Other panelists, or are we ready to proceed on to the next question? Okay, perfect. So actually, before we proceed, I would like to introduce Valerie because she just came in. Valerie, hi, are you in the call?
Hi, how are you guys?
Good, good, good. I would just like you to introduce, of course, your name, health profession, and your school.
So my name is Valerie Lindquist. I'm a physical therapy student and I'm currently at Northern Arizona University.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And do you have a response to this question? So the question was, what was your biggest challenge transitioning from being an undergraduate student to your health professions program?
So I think mine's kind of similar to what Nikki was talking about kind of trying to figure out how to fit in things that you normally really enjoy, like whether it be hang out with friends or family. And I think a lot of it is really just time management. And I think it's really important to stress that you still do find time and like make a way so you can have that kind of work-life balance with life.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Valerie. So I'm seeing about 3 questions from the people in the chat. I will ask a couple of questions from the questions that we have from the pre-health ambassadors, and then we will proceed on to the questions that you all have. So the next question is, what challenges did you all encounter when applying to professional school? Again, what challenges did you encounter when applying to professional school?
Okay, I can start. So what challenges? I think my biggest hurdle was the MCAT. And I feel like a lot of people will relate to this. I just feel like getting through that test feels like the most difficult thing you'll ever do. And at that point in time, it really is. I mean, it was harder than any personal statement I had to write, any lengthy application I had to fill out, any secondaries I had to fill out. Like that, just getting through that and sometimes taking it more than once, which I had to do, is just the biggest ordeal, I think. And I took the old MCAT and I also took the new one. So it was like really interesting in that sense for me because I kind of took both tests, and weirdly enough, I liked the new one more, even though it was like twice as long. But still, I think getting through the MCAT was the biggest challenge. And then other than that, it's just that part of you that's constantly trying to figure out that what's gonna make me stand out. Like, why would they take me over somebody else? Like, trying to find the answer for that is what, you know, takes up a lot of your time and energy, is because you're trying to do everything. But then you realize, I'm like, you know, you're not the only one who's doing everything. So making sure that you were unique enough and like standing out from a pool of applicants was also another challenging part. Now with podiatry, it's interesting because like it's so specific that we all had to show that we were exposed to this profession before we applied. We had to either shadow or we had to be had working in the field. So because, you know, they're not going to take someone who comes in and then suddenly realizes they don't want anything to do with feet or ankles. That's not going to really, you know, work out in the longer run. So trying to do that and getting all the experience you need is, so I can elaborate more on this based on what other questions come in. But so yeah, based on what you're applying to, those challenges will change, I think. So, and also just a side note, if someone doesn't know what podiatry is and they want to message me separately, that's fine, or I can talk about it more later too.
I would say my biggest challenges in applying was just like getting acquainted with the sheer amount of things that you have to do in order to get accepted. I mean, I'm sure you guys all know you have to have like this experience and like the research and the volunteering and, you know, all the different components that you need to make a good application. And I don't know, I came in as a freshman, like not really, I knew I wanted to go to medical school, but I didn't really have any guidance, like not to be mean to my high school counselors or anything like that, but they weren't very helpful at all. I don't feel like I was prepared going into my undergraduate career. Like I didn't feel like I was prepared for my courses. Like my first chemistry class I found super difficult because I had never been prepared to that level of like difficulty, I guess. But it wasn't until later when I was like around a junior that I sort of started figuring out like, okay, I'm going to apply to this research program and I'm going to do this volunteering and whatever. So I was kind of scrambling towards the end, trying to really put in all the components of my application. And just a plug, I know someone asked about what you did during your undergrad summers. Just to kind of touch on that question, summer of 2019, I did this really awesome research program called Blazer. I don't know if you guys have heard of it, but you basically are doing research for, I think, 10 weeks over the summer. You get placed in a lab in either Bio 5 or UA Health Sciences. So if any of you guys are U of A students, definitely check that out. You get a stipend and you get research credits. So I definitely say that was my most difficult part, was putting all those components in together and kind of coming to that knowledge on my own, not really having much guidance.
For me, I felt like my biggest challenge was sort of imposter syndrome, if you guys have heard of that. It's pretty much where like you feel like everything you've done, you haven't quite earned it, or like you're doing all these things, but there's still like so much more. I'm not the best person at explaining imposter syndrome, just even though I feel like I experience it, but that was my biggest challenge. So when filling out applications, I was trying to write about myself, in a positive manner, obviously. And I found that difficult because I don't like showing off necessarily, but it's an absolute requirement when you're applying because you're trying to show your best self to these programs. And so I felt like I wasn't, I don't know, my mindset definitely changed a lot while applying. I was intimidated at first, but by the end of working on my applications and everything, I was actually really excited for my interview because I thought of it as a way like, I've done all these things. I'm actually really excited to talk to people about it and to sort of show off. So I think that was a challenge, like trying not to look at applying as something scary, but as something exciting where I really want to share everything that I've done to get me to where I was at that moment.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Any more responses from my panelists? Perfect. Okay, so let us move on to the questions that were raised in the chat, and I'll copy and paste everything here. Perfect. And some of the questions are for specific panelists, so all of you don't have to answer that. But the first question was, which Sarah already responded to a while ago, how do you all spend your undergraduate summers?
I guess this kind of ties into the last question as well. A difficulty I had was that I told my advisor in undergrad, hey, I want to be an occupational therapist, put me in whatever program. I was put into exercise science and I did not get any of the prereqs. So to answer this question, I spent my last few summers of undergrad getting all my prereqs on top of my undergrad degree. So I did make time to spend time with my family and vacation, take a little me time. But my last summer after I graduated, I took 4 classes and 2 of them were anatomy and physiology. And it was A&P1 and A&P2 the next half of the summer. So 5-week class. I had anatomy and phys Monday through Friday from like 8 to 2:30. It was intense, but that's what I had to do because I put my future in the hands of somebody else and didn't really do my research. So make sure you do your research and don't let someone control your future.
Yeah, I would say my summers were kind of similar in terms of I would normally be taking classes still. But I think it's a really great opportunity to try and get some extra volunteering in, whether it be in a clinical setting, some kind of interesting setting like neuro, or also getting involved with some kind of community service, I think is a good idea over summer.
Anyone else? None? Perfect. So let us proceed to the next question. What are good study habits to start implementing now?
I think this is kind of a given, and not to beat a dead horse, but don't procrastinate. It's like, I feel like you can get away with, sort of kind of slacking off towards like the beginning part of like when you're learning stuff. And then sort of when it comes down to exam time, you're like, okay, time, it's crunch time to study really hard. You can't do that when you go to graduate school, especially not in medical school. Like someone mentioned before, you are basically drinking out of a fire hose. And if you end up leaving everything to, this sort of small dedicated study period towards the end, it's not going to bode well for you. Like doing a little bit at a time definitely is also less stressful. So you won't feel like super anxious towards the end, like, oh my gosh, I have all this stuff to do and I haven't even touched on it yet. Also another thing, it's kind of ironic, but I feel like I get more sleep now than I did in undergrad, because I felt like I was very much like, procrastinating and not necessarily pulling all-nighters, but I would not really prioritize my sleep and I'd be studying like crazy before. But now I'm much better at managing my time, and I'm also sleeping better, which you will learn that is much better for your memory, and you're not going to be able to memorize things as well, just physiologically, if you don't get enough sleep, because that's when your brain starts storing stuff. So yeah, definitely that. Prioritize your health, guys. It's important.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think the best thing you can do is plan time for yourself within your studying, because I feel like after 5 hours of studying, you're probably not retaining much after that. So I found that, having, okay, I'm going to study for an hour and then I'm going to take a 15-minute break and go do yoga or something. Like things like that help me feel motivated and more productive during my study time. Another thing I never ever did in undergrad was preview my lectures or read them right after lecture, like go over my notes. And I think that's been really helpful in PA school, just knowing what we're getting into. So I have some questions ahead of time, and if they're not answered during lecture, I can ask them, during or after. So I think that is super helpful and a new tool that I started in grad school.
Perfect.
I have
so much.
Oh,
Sorry. Go ahead.
sorry, lady. Okay. I have two suggestions. Well, okay. One thing is something I noticed that was different from undergrad to farm school is that collaborative like study groups works a lot better than just studying by yourself. I mean, in undergrad, I definitely benefited a lot from friends in my classes, and we would just go to the library and study together. And that just being able to talk concepts through or like ask questions with each other is a lot more beneficial than just sitting in front of a textbook trying to highlight and take notes. Like a lot of my classmates would agree that the Zoom study groups that we have is a better use of their time than just sitting in front of the textbooks. And then another thing that I noticed in my undergrad, I was a preceptor for microbiology, and so I had to make study sessions for classes. I found that I learned the material a lot better as a preceptor because I was making questions from the lectures and things like that. So I think it would be a good suggestion to try to look at your lectures and notes and make just like a question or two for each slide. And then by the end, you already made your own study guide and you know like where the answers are just because you wrote a question based off of that slide. So I think that would be a good tip if you made just like a Google form and just typed questions as you're taking, like the questions can be your notes, if that makes sense. And you already have a study guide with every lecture.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, everyone. So we have a lot of questions for our health profession student panel. In order to put structure to this, I would ask all of the questions that are specific to certain panelists. If you could all just write your responses in the chat. For example, there's one question that asks for Christina's email address, and for other questions, Christina, if you could write something in the chat to reply to that, that would be wonderful. For the general questions, I can just bring it up to the group and we can just continue this conversation. But there is one question that's very similar to the question that the other pre-health ambassadors wrote. And it's basically the question of, why did you choose this profession? And if you were able to consider other professions, what were those other professions?
I could go. I got a funny story about this actually. So for the longest time, or since I was little, I always wanted to help people. Obviously, we're all in the health field, we're interested and we want to help people. So for the longest time, I really wanted to be a dentist. I didn't really know about PT or OT or nursing or anything. I just always had my mindset on dentist. So a funny story, when I was little, actually, my Nana, she was in a wheelchair and she really loved Diet Coke. Oh, she really loved Diet Coke. So I tried to build like a little cup holder for her because she would always have to hold it and she would always complain like about holding it. Um, and so I made this cup holder and I told her, hey, Nana, try it out. And then a second later, the Coke's all over the floor and it just didn't work out. So ever since like that day, I just always knew I wanted to help people that are, you know, their life has changed for some reason. Or another. So I found occupational therapy when I was actually a freshman in the U of A. So ever since then, I always had my mind set on that, and I always knew I wanted to stay close to home. So I applied to NAU, and luckily I got in. But I was trying to be a dentist for the longest time, and I love dentistry, but I ended up loving occupational therapy a lot more. So.
Okay, so after undergrad, I was working in a limb salvage clinic. So basically, what that means is they have a lot of diabetic patients, and people with severe uncontrolled diabetes develop neuropathy and stop, lose the feeling in their feet. So they end up getting ulcers and calluses that turn into ulcers, and it can get pretty gnarly. So when many diabetics, I don't know how much you guys know about this, but they end up losing their feet and their legs below the knees. It's a very common thing because of all of this. So I used to work in this clinic, and that's how I got introduced to podiatry. My boss was a podiatrist. The other doctor there was also a podiatrist. So I was working with these doctors, and that's when I first realized that you can go and study through this separate program and you can get a DPM degree and you become a foot and ankle surgeon and you can help out. There's so many different conditions that you can help that are related to the feet. And for the first time, I realized how much we underestimate our feet. So it was really just mind blowing to me how much I learned in a very short amount of time. And I knew I wanted to do medicine one way or the other. So I was considering MD and DO programs, but when I came and started doing this job, I completely just fell in love with it. And I decided that I would want to do this over an MD, traditional MD or a DO route. So that's how I got into the DPM podiatry journey. So, and I'll put my email in the chat if anyone wants to email me, get more information about podiatry or foot and ankle surgery, please feel free to reach out.
I kind of answered this question in the chat, but I'll mention it because I know some people might not be able to see the chat right now. I would say that my best advice for figuring out what profession you want to go into is to shadow. Whatever career you end up deciding to pursue, it's going to take a lot of your time. Most of these programs take at least 2 years more, or most likely more, and it's going to take a lot of money also. And if money is not an issue, that's great. You can change your mind a bunch of times, but if it is, you really want to make sure you're going into the right profession. So really go out there and shadow. Somebody had asked, how do you go about shadowing? You can do blind calls. You can just call somebody, a clinic that you know has a PT and OT, or whatever profession you're looking into, and just say, hey, are you guys taking any students to shadow right now? Sometimes they're going to be up front and say, no, we don't take any students. Some places, like if you're going to a hospital, they might ask for you to go through a volunteering process. And some of them don't really have any like steps you need to do. They'll tell you, hey, show up tomorrow. I'm here from this time to this time. And then what happens is that you make connections with that therapist or that clinician, and tell them you want to keep shadowing, and they'll give you connections to somebody else. So it's all about connections. It's all about reaching out. Just do your research, go on Google, put in whatever profession and setting you want to check out, and start making calls.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So unfortunately, we are out of time, but thank you so much, panelists. You all are amazing. I loved all of your responses, and I hope all the people in this call, y'all got something from this specific panel. Wonderful job. So I will be passing it on to Sarah now for the admissions panel. Again, for the health profession student panel, thank you so much.